So let's begin by taking a few breaths. So one breathing sequence I've been using lately, which I find deeply relaxing and also energizing at the same time, is to do 4 circular breaths followed by one big inhalation and one long exhalation. So I'll just demonstrate. Breathing through the nose. And breathe in and then out through the mouth. So 4 circular breaths. In, out. In, out. In, out. In, out. And a long inhalation. And out. All the way out. So we'll just do that a couple more times. And relax. And allow your breathing just to come to its normal rhythm. You might feel a little lightheaded and a little buzz through the body mind, through the injection of oxygen. So just let that wash through your whole being. And just come to rest in the I am presence, in the beingness that's always already here. And the way we come to rest in that beingness is simply through letting go of everything. And letting go of everything, it doesn't mean all the content of consciousness. The mind doesn't mean it has to disappear. But we simply take the position of freedom, of no relationship and no identification with the arising of thought. So we're letting go of all the busyness and stresses of the day. Letting go of being somebody who has something to do. And merging into, dissolving back into our pure beingness that has nothing, that knows nothing in particular, and is nobody in particular. See if you can feel into that emptiness, that infinite space that you are, before you presume that you're a body, mind, personality. And if you allow yourself to let go and to let go and to let go, it's like gradually sinking below the surface of the waves to the bottom of the ocean. So most of the time, we're living on the surface amongst the waves of thought and emotion, desire and fear, and lots of things to do. But as we let go of all of that, we sink down and down and down. The waves may still be there, but we're sinking down. And you'll start to discover in the depth of the ocean of your own pure being, there's profound peace and complete freedom. Complete freedom because our essential being has been, and is unaffected and untouched by anything that's ever happened in time. And as we allow ourselves to dissolve into this infinite space, this emptiness, we might also paradoxically discover a sense of profound fullness, of radiance, of love, perhaps even love bliss, radiating out from the heart center in all directions simultaneously. So just bring your awareness to the heart center, the heart chakra. And stay rooted in this peace, this infinite space. And then allow yourself to feel the feeling of being, which is love bliss, essential happiness or joy without an object. So in that infinite space, in that radiance of love bliss, there is no gender, there is no male or female, there is no polarity. In that deepest, most essential dimension of who we all are, there's only that. Only love bliss, only consciousness, only God. And so, rooted in that depth, now come into the body Become aware of the breath. And just become aware of your body from head to toe. And feel yourself as a man or as a woman. Allow this infinite expanse of radically free consciousness and love bliss to inhabit your individuality as a man, as a woman. And as we come out of the meditation, tap in, tune in to what this love bliss wants. How does this love bliss, how does this essential overflowing radiance that we are, that you are, how does it want to express itself through your form as a man or as a woman? So when you're ready, you can open your eyes, come out of the meditation in the sense of opening your eyes, but stay in this depth. And then we'll do a short body poem, which we've been doing for the last 2 sessions. So in the chat, just write down what comes to you. Unedited. Don't go through, don't filter it through your mind. What does this love bliss, this unity consciousness that is our true nature, as it comes down and in to the body, as non-duality incarnates through your individuality? What is it longing to express through you in this life? And don't filter it through your mind. Just write what comes to you. Anyone else want to write anything? Can everybody hear me? Annabella, Mariana, Elena, are you there? Okay, so I'll read through what we have. So coming forward from the one heart through the Shivas and the Shaktis here. Ecstatic freedom, seeding love bliss in this world. I want to give a big hug to my wife and soon. Love bliss, longing to simply be, to expand or not, to rest within self, to feel self, no thought presence. A calmer mind. I drove off and expanded. Ecstatic freedom, seeding love bliss in this world. I want to give a big hug to my wife and soon. Love bliss, longing to simply be, to expand or not, to rest within self, to feel self, no thought presence. Feeling aligned with myself and the divine. A calmer mind. And I drove off and expanded. Okay, good. So I think everyone seems to be overflowing with love, bliss, fullness. So let's dive into an exploration from that place. Because, well, just to say that the title of these temple talks, this series, which we're going to be doing every Thursday now, Julian and I. So tonight he obviously couldn't make it, but we'll be doing it together every Thursday. And why we felt inspired to just keep doing these and see where the journey takes us is because, well, for many reasons, but one of them is that we both feel that there's a deep longing in more and more people these days to embody love in a time in which I really feel we're living through a time of apocalypse, and you could say the dark night of the species soul. We're living through a time of breakdown and potentially break through. But it's by no means certain what the future's going to bring. I think more and more of us are recognizing that we need to free ourselves from everything that is superficial in our lives and discover and bring forward our true depth, our true passion, and our true nature as love into this world. And the Shiva Shakti theme is also a theme that I think is coming forward in our time, because I think there's more and more people in Western culture, and especially in Western, let's call it postmodern alternative culture, who are becoming tired of what I could call the depolarization of the sexes. I mean, men and masculinity has been under attack for a long time now. And while there's certainly advances that have been made in terms of feminism, I think more and more women are longing to discover, well, what does it mean to embody the true feminine, that's not in reaction to patriarchy. So I see there's a lot more work going on these days, a lot more retreats, a lot more workshops. There's a lot more men's circles and retreats happening now than way more than there ever were before. I mean, it's very, very positive. And there's a lot more interest in how can we relate together, and also how can we engage in sexual relationship from this place of inherent fullness, of already being love, and not coming together with our opposite in order to get love or to feel complete. Because of course, I think more and more people are recognizing that if we're seeking fulfillment through another, once the honeymoon period is over, it usually ends up, a journey of suffering and disillusionment, and we make unrealistic demands and expectations on each other. So when we're two half full cups trying to be fulfilled, we could say that's the context of man-woman relationships in terms of the ego, in the context of the ego of the separate self. But if we would begin to discover and intuit, as we've just done here, just for a few minutes, and of course this deeper truth and being is available to us, it is our true nature. If we would begin to intuit and begin to transcend our selfish desires and see through and let go of our fears, and we start to come into this inherent sense of fullness, well then, what does it mean to embody that polarity as a man, as a woman, and also the polarity within ourselves as men, as women, because of course we also all contain the Shakti energy, the Shiva energy. This is another aspect of it. It's not strictly about gender in terms of men and women. But at least in my experience, and my experience in working with many other people, especially over the last few years, the more that a man is able to integrate within himself the masculine and feminine poles, and the more that a woman is able to integrate within herself the masculine, feminine, Shiva Shakti poles, it doesn't result in a kind of depolarized, androgynous, men and women are fundamentally the same. Actually, the opposite. It's actually then a woman, then a man comes into and falls into their inherent magnetic power and strength. And this makes a whole other dimension of relationship and relating possible. So I had put out a theme, a possible theme for tonight, but we don't have to stay with that theme. We can go wherever any of you inspired to take it. But the theme I put out was this whole matter of I called it feeling the heat. So of course, when do relationships normally begin to feel the heat? It's when there's potential for conflict. And where, of course, this goes for all relationships. So what does it take? And what does it take, particularly perhaps from a man and from a woman, to feel the heat and not divide, stay in love, in divine communion? And feeling the heat also implies not avoiding the heat, not avoiding conflict, not avoiding disagreement, because if we want to be free, one definition of what it means to be free is we're not avoiding anything. We cannot avoid anything. And so if we start to see conflict or dissonance as something potentially positive instead of negative, when we regard it as negative, we tend to avoid it in some shape or form, usually in the way that we avoided conflict when we were children or when we experienced it with our parents. Whatever conditioned response we learned to deal with conflict, we'll usually act that out in our intimate relationship as adults, or just our relationships as adults. So what does it mean to become, one way to put it is more emotionally literate? And I'm laughing. Oh, someone else coming in. Hang on. Hello. Hello, Vera.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, we're just getting started here, just introducing a theme. So yeah, what does it mean to be to become more emotionally literate? And I'm laughing because this has really been a big part of my whole journey. And those who know me well will recognize this. I mean, I'm British by birth, so I think the Brits are among the most emotionally illiterate culture on the planet. Thankfully, I wasn't born in the upper classes, so I didn't have a stiff upper lip, as we call it. But in England, growing up in England, it's generally emotionally very repressed, and people, don't show their feelings often. People are a lot of people are very polite, but usually there's all kinds of stuff going on under the surface. And also, particularly being a man also, and no doubt all the men here will be able to relate, getting to know your emotional experience and your feelings, and actually being encouraged to speak about that is really not something that we're educated with or grow up with at all. So I can remember in some of the early relationships I had in my late teens and 20s, you know, when a woman would ask me, well, what are you feeling? And I would be literally like looking down there, and there wouldn't be anything there, or I would feel numb, or I would just say nothing. So I think the first step in my journey of becoming more emotionally literate or embodied was really to bear the insecurity of not really knowing and not being very familiar with what I was feeling or with my emotional experience. And then it's been a progressive journey as of opening to that, and then allowing the feeling nature and the experience of emotions to come more and more to the foreground. And this has meant going beyond a very common male, usually very unconscious strategy of superiority in relationship to women that is really summarized in the phrase, you know, you're being too emotional. So I'm sure maybe all you guys and some of the women, I'm sure, can recognize this. And it was just occurring to me when I was thinking of this theme that, you know, that expression is kind of symbolic of the kind of patriarchal superiority and a presumption that men are somehow superior because we're more rational. And it's not very often that women will say, you know, you're being so irrational. Although they might often say some things like, you know, you're just stuck in your head. So the point I'm making is that if we want to talk about the more conditioned male, at least in my experience, there's usually a limit and some form of fear in terms of fully feeling and embracing that vulnerability that comes along with that. And if we bring that posture into a situation of friction or conflict, well, that's just going to shut the whole situation down, and women often feel put down, you know. And conversely, on the other side, while most women in general might have they're more quick to feel and more able to express their emotions, you know, we tend to be a lot slower as men. What does it mean for a woman to not fall into being judgmental of her man or of a man if it appears that they just don't get it or they don't resonate so readily with what's going on, either with her or in the relationship. So that's just something I just wanted to bring to get the ball rolling. How do we, if we want to embody the authentic Shiva consciousness and the authentic Shakti consciousness, if we're talking about the sacred masculine, the divine feminine energy, how does that come forward and how does that express itself in a situation of potential conflict? In other words, how can conflict become creative friction? And creative friction means we don't divide, right? Because usually what happens is conflict, bam, I'm right, you're wrong, blah, 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 blah. Right, so how can we stay in the heat, right, and bear that emotional intensity so we rub up against each other, Shiva and Shakti rub up against each other, and stay in love communion, even though it might get very intense. Anyone have anything to say about that?
I think I could try to play with this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the direction of the emotions or the lack of either the pushing of the emotions or the lack of owning of the emotions, which makes them land not well. I mean, in that statement you just said, "Your being too," that's a push towards the other person,
Exactly.
not I'm feeling uncomfortable with what's going on here. Or,
Yes.
So
yes,
it's awareness of the directionality of the emotions, and ownership. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, very good. Not projecting the emotion onto the other.
Or making the other person responsible for those emotions instead of saying, "This is what's in me right now."
Yeah, if I just imagine being a woman in that situation, if I was told you're being too emotional, yeah, immediately there would be a sense of attack or defensiveness, that there's something wrong with me. But if the man would say, I'm feeling this is me, I'm feeling uncomfortable, then it actually invites a curiosity. Then I could say, well, why? What are you feeling? So there's a movement towards as opposed to a recoil. Come on, guys. I'm sure you've had experience of this in your lives, if not recently.
For me, one of the things that that Liz was bringing, the way we speak and the directionality, it reminded me of the way we express ourselves, or the way I express myself. It reveals a lot, and it mirrors me, how I am going inside, because sometimes the way I feel inside and the way I am speaking, there's something that is not there if I am not aligned with what I am feeling, and if I am not being truthful to what I am feeling. And that's why I'm saying it mirrors the way I express what's going on inside. And I may not be seeing it, but who is outside may understand what is going on inside of me. And I'm noticing this more and more, because before I was kind of judging the outside and not so aware of what is inside of me and how I am expressing and if it is aligned. But if I feel that I am feeling and I am expressing and they are both aligned, there is a relaxation and there is a freedom in here. And I don't feel my mind just going and kind of inquiring why I don't feel the same thing as I am expressing. There is a disconnection in there. And I really enjoy this difference, to feel this difference of being aligned with whatever I am feeling. And then I can notice also that in the other person, there's a better connection. Because there is a presence in there.
Yeah, they can feel you.
Yeah. And then there is no rejection also in me, as feeling that I am being rejected because I'm not being felt in that moment, because I'm not being heard in that moment. And doesn't give room for the mind to just go with those ideas that I am being rejected by the other person. Yeah.
Hey, Bilal, you raise your hand.
Yeah. For me, the biggest lesson that I learned with you and the group, it's really this phrase that you say, take it as a hurt instead of taking it as an insult. I really think that mainly with the contact of the woman, sometimes it's difficult for me in the past to not react because of this. So instead of just taking it in, okay, it's painful and it's supposed to be painful for whatever past story I told myself and past emotional bodies that get triggered by the conversation. But instead of reacting to protect myself as an insult, I just taking as a hurt. And for me, more and more, feeling that as a man, I should create a safe space for my woman to express freely what she felt, even if it's painful for me to hear. It's really something that I've been learning more and more, that the verticality that is required to create a safe space for women to feel safe is this vertical pole, like strong spine that is needed on this situation where whatever she's expressing, even if it's triggering me, it's the truth of the feeling. Doesn't mean that I need to take responsibility for everything, but at least I need to create a safe space for her to be free to express it. And this is something that it's a muscle that needs to be worked on by working on myself and seeing where as a trigger, and mainly to not take it personally. It's not about me as an ego. It is what it is, and we can both learn from it. So I think it's this for me that resonates more.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things. Well, it speaks to, for us as men, it speaks to this combination of what I often describe as a strong spine and the open heart. So the open heart is our feeling presence, to not withdraw. And you also not need to try and fix our woman when she might be being emotional. That's also been a big learning curve for me. So it's that open heart presence, but also the strong spine of, like you say, not taking it as an insult, and being able to lean into conflict without dividing. And from what I know in my experience with women, and also going into this theme with many women, is this is one of the qualities that, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that women are longing for in men, is this capacity to be a strong, pure presence. That doesn't move or waver, in the face of emotionality.
Yes.
Makes sense, huh? And to be a fully feeling presence, and not a detached, because that I used to be much more, well, yeah, okay, I'm listening, you know, but emotionally I wouldn't be really available or feeling or really listening, you know, deep listening, which to me means you're listening with your heart, and not just you're not just listening to the verbal mental argument. You're listening with your heart. You're trying to feel, in this case, your woman and what's troubling her or where she's at.
I think a useful image would be, rather than like receiving something like it's coming at you, is to put yourself beside the person.
Yeah.
So that you're trying to understand how they're feeling, and be curious about, yeah, like you're beside them trying to feel what they're feeling. Yeah. So it's not coming at you. You're yeah. You're feeling it with.
Which is actually the meaning of compassion. Feeling with. What do you think, Arnaldo? I know you've got a lot to say about this.
Well, I was thinking in my journey, this theme of strong spine and open heart, this balance, it has been more, you know, when things are hot, like you say, let's sit down and let's talk, but the idea is not to win anything. The idea is to bring clarity to the situation, to bring to know each other more. And not win the competition, you know.
Right.
And this has to do a lot of posture of to listen carefully, and try to understand, and of course to keep your position and your ideas on the table.
Maybe another thing to bring in is because you said, you know, to keep your ideas, or, you know, what's important for you on the table. And so yeah, there was something in what you said. It's that quality of listening, of being in dialogue, of keeping things on the table. But I think so I'm not that I think that obviously is a lot better than just being in a situation of conflict. But if maybe this is bringing another element into the inquiry, is if there's recurring patterns of conflict or friction, right? So sometimes there's just things that happen, right? Something happens, there's a blow up, you know, you have to sort something out. But of course, one of the challenges and also opportunities of being in intimate relationship, it's like a crucible. It's like, we could say it's like it can be like a spiritual ashram, you know, where everything's going to get exposed. All of your patterning, all of your fears, all of your lack of love, also all of your capacity to love. If we really commit ourselves and give ourselves, it can be a great source of growth. And of course, if it's a long-term partnership, we also go through changes, you know, over time. If we are growing and evolving, then we don't stay the same. You know, in a more conventional or egoic context, couples basically want each other to stay the same out of security. And then people often avoid conflict, or they just deal with they might resolve conflict on the surface, but they don't really deal with the real issues, the deeper issues. So one aspect I think that's really important in this whole matter of what does it mean to live a truly evolutionary partnership is to not just to be locked into this sort of diplomatic modality, you know, of and I'm not saying this is what you were saying, Arnaldo, but sometimes we might actually need to assert ourselves, and we might need to fully express even strong emotions. I'm talking about when there's repeating patterns of conflict. And then, of course, what we come up against then, when that would arise, is the fears we might have of how the other is going to react, of maybe losing the relationship. So what does it take to be that free in relationship, that such that freedom itself, spiritual freedom itself, would have a higher value than the sustaining of the relationship, you know, or of security? Because to me, that's true vulnerability in relationship, because it means there's no fundamental contracts, in the sense that when we're challenged, yeah, we don't want to compromise ourselves or the relationship out of fear. We want to take the risk to be ourselves, to put our cards on the table, right? Is put our cards on the table. And that might mean actually turning up the heat. It might mean we might have to turn up the heat on occasion to really burn through a pattern or some dynamic in the relationship that's less than whole and less than free. I've certainly experienced occasions and that in my own life in intimate relationship where it was my willingness or her willingness to really put the cards on the table such that it created a crisis of a kind in the relationship, that it actually led to a breakthrough together, that something changed in the whole dynamic. Takes a lot of courage. You got anything to share on this theme, Annabella? No? I'm just looking for a quote, something I wanted to share with you from a book I'm reading. So this is from a book I'm reading. It's a very interesting one called Transformation Through Intimacy by, it's called The Journey Towards Awakened Monogamy. That's a radical idea. And the subtitle is Relational Intimacy as a Sanctuary and Crucible for a Deeper, More Authentic Life, by Robert Augustus Masters. So this guy is, he's both been a spiritual teacher and he's also a therapist. And I'll just read something that I read yesterday on this theme. To view emotions as lower or less reliable than reason also has serious gender implications, given that femaleness is commonly associated with getting emotional and maleness with being rational. This hierarchical view is roughly paralleled by claims that the neocortex, up here, associated with rational thought, is higher than the older zones of the brain that supposedly house and mediate emotions, which implies that men, being supposedly more rational, are therefore more developed than women. Your being emotional remains much more of a put down than your being rational. Many factors must be taken into account in examining a particular emotion, not the least of which is the interrelatedness of the various emotions. Anger may be a defense against sadness, or sadness may be a defense against anger. Rage at its peak may suddenly change into joy. Surfacing sadness or anger might trigger shame, and surfacing shame might lead to sadness or anger. Mix together shame and fear, and you'll probably get guilt. When anger and disgust come together, contempt arises, and so on. To become emotionally literate, we have to become intimate with our emotions, knowing them from the inside, as well as knowing both our repressive and expressive tendencies regarding them. As obvious as it may sound, we need to know what we're feeling when we're feeling it. On the way, we must learn to find the balance between containment, as when our held-in anger needs to be given empathetic voice. We must learn to find the balance between containment, as when our anger is about to turn into aggression, and expression, as when our held-in anger needs to be given emphatic voice. Healthy restraint and healthy uninhibitedness. Do you see? That's the point I was trying to bring forward, is that, I mean, anger is a good example, right? So at sometimes it may be appropriate for us to be in the posture more of containment, so our anger doesn't turn into aggression. But then sometimes our anger may be what we could call sacred fire. It's coming from a deep sense that maybe we're not being respected, or something's being avoided in the relationship. And we might have to take the risk to actually express it healthily, you know, so that we're heard, you know, something is heard from us that wouldn't be heard otherwise, you know, if we just tended to suppress it. So in my experience, it's really about being in this, yeah, it's again, it all comes back to freedom, you know, not having a strategy or you know, again, in relationship to anger, it's a good one, because it's so common for us to especially if we're more spiritually interested individuals, to feel that there's something inherently egoic or wrong with anger or expressing anger. And maybe most of the time that might be the case, but sometimes it's very important to express it. Clean, penetrating anger, you know, before it becomes aggression, you know, so that something that needs to be heard is potentially received. Does that make sense in your experience?
A lot of sense. In my case, you know, as a nice guy, some time ago, I had this kind of experience where, you know, I didn't what is the word in English? I was angry, and I had the courage to express my anger. And it was very liberator for me, and also for my partner. Because from that point, of course, it was a situation of some uncomfortable, but from that point, everything is more clear with regarding our red lines, you know.
Right. Yeah, so she really heard you.
Yeah. And as you said, it's very important to forget the nice guy and have the courage and the balls to, yeah, This
That's
is
right.
this is what I think.
And isn't that what women are longing for, is for men to have courage and balls? And if needed, stand up to them. Does that make sense in your experience, Liz? Because I think you're probably a similar age to me. You've had quite a lot of life experience. And would you agree that how can I put this? That that there's something that is deeply perhaps women are deeply longing for, in terms of respecting, you could say, a natural authority in man. When a man actually shows that he can't be manipulated, and he's not afraid to show himself and show his force. If there's some way in which that's occurring.
I feel like expression of anger is often about, you've crossed a boundary of mine. And so being able to express that anger is a transparency, like an honesty about, like, this is my limit, this is my boundary. But if you don't express where your boundaries are, then your partner doesn't know where you are, and can't feel you, and might continue to set you off. And so anger is important. And yeah, there's this other element I was feeling into that. Again, it has to do with how the anger is delivered. If the anger is delivered like on you, at you, and seemingly about you, that's different than like a deep excavation of like what's really going on inside myself. Let me just tell you exactly what I'm feeling fully right here, and it's about me. It's not about you. So there's something, again, about this directionality. Like, you can explode and own it and feel it and become it beautifully. It's so transparent and honest. But if it's just being sort of thrown at the other person and not owned in a way, but blamed or delivered on the other person, you feel it differently. So it's about this directionality thing again.
Yeah. Yeah, then it's very clean.
Yeah.
Very hot. Very hot.
It can be as hot as you want it to be. If it's clean, if it's about me, it's like.
Also, because it's interesting, you've pointed 2 times to this, the directionality dynamic. And so I was just getting the difference, because it doesn't mean it, say there's anger being expressed. Of course, the anger is being expressed in relationship, about the relationship or the dynamic. But it's something about when we take responsibility for ourselves, it's in our own freedom, and then the delivery or the transmission calls upon the heart of the other, that I'm actually in pain, I'm in anguish, I've reached my limit here.
You're describing something real inside you that's going on.
As opposed to, you're doing this to me again, or
exactly.
Yeah.
Keep like making it about yourself.
Mm.
And description of your boundaries and description of the fragility of being crossed in those boundaries.
Mm.
And that's like really important, beautiful information to share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Makes a lot of sense. Bye-bye, Annabella. All right, well, we're coming up to 8:30, so should we just drop into meditation for a couple of minutes before we finish?
Yeah, I need to leave as well.
Okay. So let's just drop in for a minute. And just feel into what's staying with you after this dialogue. So I feel quite a burning in my heart area. And that sense of what it takes.
Yeah.
What it takes to be true to love and to ourselves, to not compromise. And I've got a big smile on my face because Julian's just dropped in. Hey, Julian.
Hey man, I'm still in the airport.
We're just finishing the session here.
Lovely. Good to be here.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much. Sorry for the delay. And
Thank you, Pete. See you
We'll
next
be-
week, Julian, I hope.
yeah, Julian and I'll be on together next time,
Yeah, next time we'll be together.
and we'll see where we take it.
Hey Bilal. Hey
Hey,
Joao.
Julian.
Hey Liz. Roloff. Arnaldo. Hope you had a beautiful session. I'll watch the replay.
Okay. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good
Have a
night.
beautiful week. See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.